Are you ready? What's my name? What's my name? Say Kareem Ali. Say Kareem Ali. You're listening to
Are you serious?
the Hip Hop Debate Show.
Okay, so hear me out.
The official podcast of Kareem Ali. In about 2 seconds, Kareem Ali will begin to speak. All right. Yo, Kareem Ali TV. You're here on the Are You Serious podcast. Got 2 special guests today. We're going to be talking some boxing. I got my man James, the Professor Campbell, and I got who's a boxing aficionado. I've known him for a long time. He gets on my damn nerves. And then another irritant of mine, King Shice, one of the greatest poets from Philadelphia, Mr. Ray Williams. How you doing, brother? Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, man.
So,
okay, love to talk boxing. Love it.
I see you so excited in anticipation. You shaking a little bit. You know
yeah.
Some fight about to happen. I feel y'all, brothers. I feel you. So listen. So in about 2 seconds, Kareem Ali will begin to speak. Listen.
Okay.
So I feel like this is an assertion of mine. You can agree or disagree. And you may agree with me. I don't know. It may not be a debate at all. I believe that the Muhammad Ali of 1967 is not only the greatest heavyweight of all time, he may be the greatest fighter of all time. I believe that Ali, the one that beat Oscar Bonavena, the one that beat Cleveland Williams, the one that knocked out Zora Foley before his exile, would probably defeat any heavyweight in history. And because he was a scientifically advanced boxer beyond the previous generation of the Joe Lewises and the Rocky Marcianos, I believe that if this Ali had faced Joe Frazier in 1971, that Joe Frazier wouldn't have stood a chance. Ali would have picked him apart. He would have found him at every destination. Joe would have never been able to get going, and it would have been almost a no contest. What say you? Who wants to go first to challenge Kareem Ali on this?
You ain't gonna get no pushback from me. Those are the things I've been, telling cats for a while, and it's funny because most cats don't see that Ali. Even myself. When I go back in YouTube, I always go more so to see the declining Ali that used his IQ, because the Ali that back never touched the rope, there's no drama in those fights. You just looking in awe at the Cleveland Williams, the Floyd Patterson, Zoe Foley. You just looking in awe like, yo. And to that other point, I always said that because he would have caught Joe, long as he stayed dedicated, he would have caught Joe coming out the Olympics before he developed and became the fighter he was. And even if the fighter he was, I don't think, because, most of the success Joe had was when he got Ali against the ropes. That Ali didn't have the legs to dance 15 rounds anymore. Like when he fought Ernie Terrell, never touched the ropes, 15 rounds, effortless. You know what I mean? So being out for 3.5 years, not knowing if you ever was coming back, I guess, he wasn't in the gym every day and all that kind of stuff. And, he just, it's the
ring rust. A lot of ring rust going on.
Yeah, and he never really got that back, because you would think, as you look, because Holyfield said that one time, he was just making a point about how much they know about sports medicine. Some of the things they learn about the different vitamins, and I'm saying vitamins.
Steroids.
They all taking them. They all taking them. They all taking them. That's why
liquid.
That's why you see Bernard could fight for years later. You never seen welterweights fight for at that high level as Floyd did at 37, 38. Especially it wasn't too much of a decline in his speed and reflexes and his legs and stamina. So even if they're not using things that's banned, they're using something that the guys in the 60s and 70s didn't have.
I agree. James, what would you say to this point?
Yeah, you're not gonna get much fight from me on that either. I think the only other fighter I would say, and really there's no comparison, I would say maybe Jack Johnson. And the reason I say there's no comparison is because that was like primal boxing, and that was bare knuckle. Right. They let you fight with broken ribs, couple teeth knocked out. And so I would have to put Jack Johnson up there, but again, I don't think there's a comparison between him and the Ali you speak of, just because the time difference in the time that they fought, it was a truly different fight game at that time. But no, I wouldn't argue with your first point.
Well, you guys are smart. I tried to set you up, and you're very smart. not to, I should have brought someone over here that didn't know as much about what they were talking about. It would have been more entertaining. But I came prepared because I knew it was going to go that way. Floyd Mayweather, who I think is probably one of the most scientifically advanced boxers of all time, probably the greatest defensive fighter that I've ever seen, other than maybe, technically, excuse me, let me go first, other than Pernell Whitaker, who just wasn't available to be hit. But from a technique standpoint, I felt like Pernell relied a lot on his, this could be a whole nother show topic for another day, but that's not where I'm going now. I think Pernell kind of relied on his reflexes more, upper body movement, whereas Mayweather, he has a myriad of things that he uses staying out of range, his footwork, the high guard at times, a drop jab. But Floyd Mayweather believes that he's the greatest fighter of all time, and he only puts Ali number 4 on his list, and one of the reasons he uses that is that Muhammad Ali, listen, do we give Ali too much? He said that Muhammad Ali lost to a fighter that only won 8 fights in
the space fight.
And when Muhammad Ali was 38, he was washed up against Larry Holmes, Trevor Berbick in 1981, who almost thought Ali won that fight because maybe Berbick wasn't trying to hit him that hard or something like that. But when Mayweather was 38, he was still dominant. What do you think about Floyd Mayweather's point? Do you think that Floyd Mayweather has the right to feel that he's the GOAT?
I'll let you go this time first.
Yeah, I'll go first on this one. Yes, I think he has the right to feel that he's the GOAT. I mean, you have to kind of have that mentality to even be in this sport.
I agree with that.
But I will say that I think, to your first point, his career actually kind of followed Ali's, if you really look at it. I mean, because early in Floyd's career, he was, he used his legs a lot. He used a lot of movement. He didn't get hit a lot. Once he got older and his legs started to go, that's when he really started to rely more on his defense. And that's when he started to sit in the pocket and be elusive right there in the pocket. It's kind of the same way Ali did. When his body and his skills started to fail, he used his mental IQ in boxing to supplement that and get his wins. So, I mean, he's talking about somebody that really his career actually followed, if you ask me.
Yeah, he made a debate that his Ali and Roy Jones were the same fighter. Their defense was their legs. And when their legs went, they couldn't defend anymore. Whereas Floyd, he believes that he has a greater level of defensive efficiency.
No, you couldn't.
Go ahead, my brother.
No, I've seen Ali roll punches on the ropes. You watched the George Foreman fight.
Of course.
As hard as George hit, there were some clean shots because you're going to get hit, laying on the ropes. But most of them fights, punches, he's leaning back, he's rolling them, like right there at the right time, he's rolling, he's pulling his head in, taking his strength away. Ali was doing a lot of different things, when not using his legs. You've seen him do it against other, many fighters. You've seen him do other things than just use his legs. He always, could move his chin right at that split second. He always had that, because what's being said, you rarely seen Ali until it was the very end. Get hit by a combination, and that's always the telltale sign. You can always catch a fighter clean, maybe one good shot, and they got a chin, they can take it, like Floyd when Madonna hit him, and
Shane Mosley.
And what's my man?
Corley caught him, yeah.
Corley had his head rigged, but you never catch him with 2 or 3 shots. You didn't even see that. You didn't even see that. I'm interjecting Bernard in the conversation to the end with Corley, with Kovalev and Joe Smith. Even when Pascal or somebody else hit him, you couldn't hit him with a combination. So I watched Floyd do these interviews, and he's like,
the guy paused out on us. He was making a good point. Go ahead, continue, James.
You brought up the same thing I was going to bring. I was going to bring up the rope-a-dope in the Foreman fight, and Ali had a lot of defensive skills. And a lot of people don't even know the Ali shuffle was actually a defensive move.
And then with that fight, he showed it. He didn't have the legs. He just kept jabbing him. Every time he got close, he tied him up. So he had more than Roy had. And after he lost his legs, he had a lot of different things he could, like you said, a myriad of things to come up with.
It's funny you bring up the George Foreman fight. I know the people in my father's generation, when they experienced that in real time, it was like unbelievable that Ali beat Foreman. But every time I've watched the fight, I thought Ali won most of the rounds. I thought from the beginning He was just like popping him with the jab and leaning off with the right hand and
I had it
out of range. I was like,
I had at least
like
even
6-2 or something like that.
I had at least even because before we could watch these fights in YouTube and it entirely later on before YouTube it was ESPN Classics. They would show or ABC Classics. You get the whole fight, but I would read about it in Ali's books, and they made it seem like Ali was just getting pounded for 6 rounds. But I'm watching this fight, I'm like, no, he's catching him. He's catching him. He's pulling him behind his head. He's doing, I had to fight even until Ali said, he's gassed. I got him.
That's enough. So no one believes that Floyd Mayweather I believe that Floyd Mayweather has the right to believe that about himself.
Oh, of course, if I was 50-0, I would say the same thing.
He did the work. I think he believes that because of the stances that Ali took, because Ali was a political figure that was similar even to a Malcolm X, so just as important. Ali was important in that era, in the 60s. So I think Floyd Mayweather is trying to separate that. But just boxing, and he thinks that just boxing, he thinks he's the best ever in terms of his skill set. And I see the smirk on James.
But I do separate the two because I hear people try to do that with LeBron and Jordan. I'm like, no, you're not going to do that. We know LeBron does this great philanthropism, but we're talking about what we see on the court. However you call it, we call it in the court. I don't give Ali extra points because what he did outside the ring. What he did outside the ring, I give you extra points iconically as
a human being.
Like to me, he's Black Superman.
Yeah,
that's
one of the top 100 greatest human beings to ever walk the earth, in Kareem Ali's opinion.
But put that on the fact that he was the greatest. Like he legitimately won 3 heavyweight titles, twice against 6-1 and 7-1 odds. Come on, man.
When the heavyweight championship meant something, when it was one heavyweight championship, most important title in the world, he won it then.
When they were bigger than basketball and football players,
much bigger. So you think Floyd Mayweather should sit his ass down? Is what you guys are saying?
No, no. I think we all agree that at 50-0, you're going to say it.
Right.
I'm not going to. For me, I just don't. I always when he first started going TBE, I was like, okay, if he was in the 80s, could he went from 135 beating Duran, 140 beating Pryor, 147 beating Leonard, and 154 beating Hearns and remain undefeated? I don't see it. But I think he will compete. He will compete.
He competed in the era for sure. What do you say, James?
I think the other thing I heard a interview he did when he started the whole TBE thing, and he actually mentioned Ali, and he said Ali kept saying he was the greatest, and all of a sudden everybody calls him the greatest, which is why he started doing the whole TBE thing, and he said because I am the best ever, and I'm like, I see where you're going with that, but just because you say something over and over again doesn't necessarily make it true. I think he's one of the greatest fighters of all times. Absolutely. I don't know if he is the greatest fighter of all times. I think he's definitely in the discussion.
I seen this one poll. I don't even know how they did it. They put Manny as the best fighter of this era. I'm like, how you put him as the best fighter of the era when he lost to Floyd and got knocked out by Marquez? And I think he lost at least one other fight to Marquez.
Well, Max Kellerman makes that point because of the weight divisions and his leap from where he came from and the big fights that he won. And a lot of people criticize Floyd Mayweather for taking fighters at the end of their career, or when the welterweight division was at its zenith, he somehow found a way not to fight some of the top guys at their best, like Margarito, Paul Williams. I might have stayed away from Paul Williams too. This is a bad.
But we seen Paul get outboxed by that Puerto Rican kid. Then he came back and knocked it. He came and knocked him out in the first round, or first and second round. He stopped him, but his problem was, the dude gave him all kinds of angles. I don't think none of them. I think what you're saying is legit. It's very legit, and I don't see none of them beating Floyd. But Floyd should have fought him.
Yeah,
I throw Margarita out because of the loaded gloves. Like, okay, but he should have fought Cotto before. When Cotto was beating Shane and Zab, and he was that dude. Like, you want to see that when they was both unbeaten. You wanted to see that. You wanted to see him against Manny after he knocked out Cotto.
Yeah,
not after Marquez knocked him out.
May have been worried. He may have legitimately been worried that Manny was really juiced up Because when Manny fought Cotto, I stood up out of my seat like he's got to be juiced on something. Because it wasn't just that he was beating the hell out of Cotto with a barrage of punches, but he was walking through the punches of a bigger man. And I was like, is this guy from Krypton or something? What the fuck?
And then he went to 154 and did it with Mac. Like Roger Floyd Sr. said it. The Manny Margarito hit him with a body shot. He kind of doubled up, and then he's like, "Come on!" And we seen him against Eric Morales getting smacked around the first time. I'm like, "How you get smacked around at 130?" I think it was. I got to look it up. Was it 130? And now you walking down a big, strong 147 Cotto. Well, he did drain him, make him come in at 144, but he was still bigger and stronger than him. And then you go up to 154. I just couldn't see it. Because I seen who else gave me problems? Marquez. He always had the power, but I seen him get smacked around at 130. So I'm looking like,
how do you get bigger and stronger and carry your power up another weight division and a half?
But did he? Because once the accusations came out, they started looking at him.
Yeah.
It wasn't no more knockouts between Cotto and what was the boy name? What was the last dude? Matisse. From Matisse to Cotto, it's a lot of. He still had power because he could pop. And everybody at 40.
She wasn't going to sleep. The way he beat Margarito,
Ricky Hatton,
his orbital, his eyesight is ridiculous.
He just walked across the ring and knocked Ricky Hatton dead.
Pacquiao's a great fighter. He's very, very hard.
But we
see even Floyd Mayweather trying to figure him out.
But we see, everybody knows. Yeah, everybody knows how Duran was the hands of stone at 135. 140, 147, 154, the knockouts went away. He could still hurt you. He could still beat you up like he did Barkley and Davey Moore, but he wasn't knocking people. Nobody wasn't calling him the hands of stone no more.
Right. That's very true. So no one believes that Floyd Mayweather is the best ever. Is he the most skilled boxer you've seen? Would you put him on the level of an Ali, of a Sugar Ray Robinson? Is he a pound of all time?
I like it when you talk about Pernell, because Pernell stood right in front of you with some of the best, like Chavez and Ramirez and dudes like that. He stood in front of them. Even at an advanced age, he stood in front of De La Hoya.
I still feel like that fight should have been, from a statistical standpoint, the CompuBox. I felt like Pernell won that fight. I felt like because De La Hoya was on the way up and there was a lot of money to be made, and it was a close fight. You got to give it to De La Hoya because Pernell is on his way out and De La Hoya is on his way to bigger and better things. But in my opinion, I felt like Pernell Whitaker probably won the fight against De La Hoya. And I'm not even sure that De La Hoya beat, what was the fighter's name? He slips my mind at the moment. Oh, man. Ike Cortez?
Oh, I don't think he beat Ike Cortez either.
When you go back and look at the round for round. Now, De La Hoya, don't get me wrong, in the clutch, when the pressure was on, he landed a monstrous left hook that drawed the fight very, very close. But when you look at the rounds, when I go back and score the rounds, I just can't really. It's hard for me to give it to De La Hoya. I got to say like 7-5.
What bothers about De La Hoya, he can't help it because he fought everybody. Trinidad, Shane, he fought everybody. What bothers me is how he handles Canelo and Ryan. Like he treats them like they in glass. when you as a fighter you took Bernard, like you went all the way up to 160 and took Bernard after Bernard stopped Trinidad. Like De La Hoya took all the big fights.
Well, I think because,
but he won't put Canelo nowhere near Charlo.
I think because now he's a businessman, and he's only a businessman, and so he's looking at them as cash cows, and he's like, listen, I got to keep these guys winning, I got to keep these guys marketing, and so I think he's looking at the whole aspect of it different. He's looking at it completely.
But now we got to go to the Floyd thing, because the Floyd thing was stay undefeated, stay the cash cow, because Oscar, Sugar, Hearns, Tommy, all these guys took L's and still made money. And we wanted to see them again.
So
You
do you
did
think?
not want to see Tommy after he lost to Hagler. You wanted to see him again.
So do you think that Floyd Mayweather and his mastery of the business of boxing has kind of ruined the competition of the sport? If fighters not fighting the best fighters,
I'm not blaming it on Floyd because Floyd earned diva position
that
from 130 to
sounds like
130 to 135 to 140. He earned it. Like he fought Gennaro Hernandez, Castillo, Corrales. He took those fights. Then he put himself in the diva position after he beat Oscar.
okay.
So I would look at the Crawfords and the Spencers and the Charlos. Y'all Tank. Y'all ain't do the work to be divas.
I would agree with that 100%. And in those days, you had to earn that. You had to really put in some work before you got the diva status, as you call it.
Sugar Ray.
I would have to agree 100% on that one. I think some of these guys need to get into the trenches, but I also think that I think the mentality is a little bit different today, and I think that fighters don't handle losses the way that they used to. And I think some of these guys, if they had a loss like that early in their career, it may ruin them. And I think part of that is probably not their fault because they're being handled with kid gloves. But I just think that
Let me step in right there.
Yeah, I got a good question for that.
I feel like I'm so irritated that anytime a fighter loses, people act like their career is over. Why? Of all the best fighters fight the best fighters, then someone's gonna lose. Look at the way that the UFC is done. They force you to fight the best guys. You're gonna end up with some L's on your records, but it's okay. You come back, you fight again. You're gonna take an L here and there. Sometimes some people got your number. Sometimes someone just had a better night, but it doesn't mean that you're finished. That you got to go start from the bottom again. No, you get back in there.
But
that's the
fans.
Yeah.
That's the fans, because I really look back, I was like, we didn't do that. When Tommy lost to Sugar, nobody threw Tommy away. It kind of made both of them bigger. When Sugar lost to Duran the first time, it made them both bigger because it's the fight. Duran against Little was an epic fight. Tommy against Sugar was an epic fight. So we just wanted to see him again.
But hear me out. But if you look at those fights, a lot of those fights back then, you didn't really know who was gonna win those fights. A lot of those fights with those top guys, you had no real.
You went with your heart. You went with your heart.
You wasn't gonna bet no money. And I think a lot of times you don't really see fights like that today. Again, and it goes back to the best fighting the best. A lot of times, most of the fights today, you kind of know who's gonna win before they even go into it, and so. I think that's where I was talking about with the confidence is that, they build these guys up and, they give them these fights that they should win. And if they take a L, I think that could really destroy their confidence.
But they doing that with at 135. I heard Haney and Devontae basically said, like, they throwing Lomo away. I'm like, okay, because Lopez beat Lomo. Tank, that don't mean you can beat Lomo.
Oh,
My heart is with Tank. My heart is with Tank. But I'm not going to say. I don't think he. Especially if Lomo go back to 130, where Tank likes to fight at 130, and Lomo, come on, man, because Lomo literally lost because he was fighting a bigger, younger, everything.
Right.
Because he struggled against Linares and the rest of them just because they were bigger.
Yeah, you can account for the size of the power and the reflexes of the kid too was pretty for.
Yeah, true. But I don't think Devin Haney, you get to just because he lost, we the big four. No, I think Lomo could be 2 or 3 of y'all in the big four.
He's not done just because he lost one fight. Who knows if he had a rematch?
I wouldn't even count him because he did better than later rounds.
He would start earlier. He knows what to do. He would start earlier. The same way that Tyson Fury knew that if he stood inside against Deontay Wilder's power,
he made him go backwards.
He could beat him up because he can't fight off the back leg. And when he figured that out at the end of the first fight, he was like, "Oh, I can stand in here. I can walk him down." And so he walked him down and basically beat him up on the inside. I think Lomachenko could somehow employ the same type of tactics against Teofimo Lopez the next time they fight.
He wanted He wanted to get Lopez in deep water because he didn't
Right.
think he could fight at that level in the deep
Right.
water. But you didn't do enough early.
Right.
You want to do something early to
He was
drain
waiting
that
for him to
tank.
make a mistake, and Lopez never made the right mistake that he could exploit.
Yeah, he just kept jabbing to the bottom.
Yeah.
But yeah, to the point is one loss. Come on, man, and we because everybody was doing that. Oh, you know.